Batman Arkham Origins. Ideally the dark horse of the Arkham series, and it's also the less likeable for some reason because I personally enjoy this game. Now it's not because of how early it is in Batman's Arkham journey and his career as Batman, but it's a lot different than compared to the other games. I'd like to explore that a little bit more in this video because it's definitely a lot more unique than just shitting on it all the time and saying how bad of a Batman game it is, because it's generally not half bad. Yes, it has its moments, but yes, it's not a half bad game at all. As a matter of fact, I actually believe this game actually has a bit of a different, better storyline compared to the other games in the series, where most of them are just all about hunting down one particular villain or three. This whole game has 8, which is a bit different, and it's also kind of how the reason why I think this game is just very underrated as a whole. I mean, fair enough, sometimes you actually realise that we could not be getting the Joker in this game and it's all new villains, but then you turn out and you realise, oh yeah, Black Mask's the Joker, yay, and then eventually he just becomes the main villain of the game. So yeah, I mean, we can't really have an Arkham game without Joker, it seems. The one thing I love about this game is how great Troy Baker does as the Joker. I mean, obviously we've seen Mark Hamill as doing it properly a good few years back from the 90s animated series, but I genuinely believe Troy Baker does a great job as Batman in other forms of media and the Joker in this game, because he's a lot more happy-go-lucky younger Joker than what we see as Mark Hamill's Joker in Arkham Asylum, Arkham City and Arkham Knight. But it's a lot different Joker, and I generally love seeing that kind of side of Joker, because we never really see that much side of a young Joker in the comics, because it's usually always a more older, more fast-paced, laughable Joker, and it's usually not like how energetic we see in this Joker. So I think Arkham Origins has one of the better Jokers in my opinion out of all the Joker media we've ever had. But I genuinely do believe Bane is also a great villain that makes this game. His boss fights are really intriguing and very fun to actually do, and there's a lot of great stuff sequences within these, especially when you're fighting him on the balcony and eventually the final battle of the game, which I find pretty enjoyable in my opinion. Now, Deathstroke is a really great character in the DC comics, but I genuinely have no sympathy for this boss battle whatsoever. He's going all over the place, shooting with his claw, beating you up with his fucking stick, and eventually taking off his helmet in the final battle, to which you can finally do some kind of damage. And he's also got that fucking knife you can't even get past if you tried. And I gotta say, I definitely died on the knife part quite a lot, especially that fucking bow staff. To Copperhead in this game, I definitely say Deathstroke is probably the first hardest boss you come across in this game. It's probably the first hardest boss battle that you're actually challenged on the game, but once you beat him, it's kind of a much victorious, because you kind of feel really relieved that you actually managed to beat this little fuckhead at the end. So honestly, if it all comes down to it, it's worth it, and just beating this guy till you get to the end of the game. The combat in this game is very similar to what Arkham City did so well, and used it actually a little bit more and upgraded the system to be a little bit more fast and swift. Also because we have Batman having his electric gloves in this game, which kind of made it a little bit even faster as a gameplay, and actually made it a bit more satisfying actually to punch these guys in the face, counter, and do all that crazy Batman shit, because it actually made it a whole lot more fun than what it actually was. And I genuinely believe that is the whole reason why the electric gloves made it the best experience of this game, because if you're moving from one enemy to another, it's incredibly satisfying. The relationship between Batman and Alfred in this game is very well done. It's almost a lot different from what we've not actually ever seen before in Batman media, with Batman and obviously Alfred arguing, apart from the Telltale series, but that doesn't really count. But obviously Alfred actually is pretty good in this game. He does help out a lot, and he's not always saying, hello sir, yes sir, hello sir, yes sir. But he actually does help out a lot, which I actually do enjoy that, and he's actually a lot more worried for Bruce. And it's all the more kind of sympathetic when you actually eventually save him from Bane and getting crushed from the Batcave near the end of the game, because it just shows that Bruce Wayne does enjoy and actually does actually care about Alfred, rather than just letting him perish and die, which I think was one of the best moments in any Arkham game and any part of the Arkham series. But the one thing I never really understood was they tried to make Alfred think he's going to die, but we see him in the other games because this is an origin story, and because he's literally in the other games, so it doesn't make sense to why they would make him die. Like, what the fuck was that? All in all, I do believe that we need to get a remaster of Arkham Origins, because it is so underrated. There's no fucking clue why it's underrated, because the game doesn't even know itself like what it's doing half the time, but I genuinely love it. Yes, it's not perfect, but it has some really great elements in this game that we haven't really seen in the other Arkham games, and it's a lot different take. And obviously, because it's a different, like Rocksteady didn't like do this, but instead they did do it by Warner Brothers Montreal. But instead, it actually was a really great game to actually play, and all around great Batman game. So all I'd have to say is I give this game an 8.5. Because it's honestly much better than what I usually would have expected in any Batman game, especially when I was playing it at 8 years old. Not only that, but this whole story of the whole game is actually thoroughly enjoyable. It's not even one of those games where you get bored playing it halfway to 2 to 3 hours in and you just end up giving up, because it is a Batman game after all, and you're going to enjoy it. Because obviously it doesn't have just the main story, it has the open world, it has the side missions, and of course it has a DLC, by the way, with Mr. Freeze. And I didn't really exactly know if Mr. Freeze was a good fit for the DLC. I would have liked to have seen someone else, because we did see him in the game prior to that. But I would have probably preferred, I don't know, maybe Clayface or Ra's al Ghul. But yeah, again, they were in Arkham City. But honestly, if we saw like a younger version of those guys, because he practically looks exact same as he did in Arkham City. So honestly, I wouldn't really care for Mr. Freeze being in another Arkham game. But please, Rocksteady, if you're watching this, just make a remaster already. Like, god damn it, how hard is it? Steady. Give us the remaster.